Olá, bem-vindo ao Brazilian Connection. A gente está falando direto do Festival da Diaspora aqui no Rio de Janeiro e eu vou conversar com o homem por trás deste evento tão importante para a comunidade negra e para o mundo como um todo. Eu estou com o Cordell Carter, o fundador do Festival da Diaspora, e vamos saber todos os detalhes deste festival agora aqui com ele. So thank you very much for being with us, Cordell.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Yeah. So what is the Festival of the Diaspora and why it's happening in Brazil?
Sure. So the Festival Diaspora was created 4 years ago in a cafe in San Juan, Puerto Rico. I was sitting with a group of professors trying to understand why they were so upset with my presentation on American values. I was on the island to do a presentation called American Values, and I was very proud of this seminar, and they were not very happy with me. And I said, well, what's going on? And they said, we need to talk. We need to talk away from these people. I said, okay, let's have dinner tonight. And so I'm sitting down with these 5 Afro-Puerto Rican women, all professors. They said, do you understand what American empire is? I'm like, no.
How old were you?
This was 4 years ago.
Oh, 4 years
So I was in my
recent.
40s. Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
And so I'm sitting and I'm listening to things that I'd never heard before. I didn't know anything about the idea of being a possession and not a nation state. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know. And I'm supposed to be smart. I'm supposed to know these things, right? I was shocked that I didn't. I would imagine that more people didn't. And then the conversation shifted pretty dramatically. They said, can you tell me something? I said, what's that? They said, why are you so unhappy? I'm like, I'm fine. It says, no. We're talking about Black people in the USA. Why are you so unhappy? You have everything. Why are you so unhappy? I said, well, tell me why you're so happy. And they said, we're surrounded by things that bring us joy. I said, okay, let's trade some of your joy for my resources. And all of a sudden we can both be happy and resourced. So let's do it. And so the conversation kept ratcheting up. And we said, okay, let's do a hemispheric convening of Afro-descendant people. Like, oh yeah, that's great. Let's do it. And so we left that dinner committed to the notion of doing a festival of the diaspora. It was called the Afro-Latinx Festival of the Diaspora. COVID happens. 4 months later, they disappeared. But we still proceeded with the festival in Puerto Rico in February of 2022. And the idea behind it is connection. We have 35 countries in the Americas. We are separated by borders, by isms, by false notions of history. We have artificial separators in front of us. And we don't think of ourselves as Americans, as members of the Americas. And so we want to remedy that. So that's the connecting part. Celebrating this idea that we have shared history. We were either products of human trafficking as Afro-descendant people, products of the most grievous form of apartheid and genocide if you're indigenous. So there's a lot going on here in Americas, and we share these things, but what we share in common is what I call the other AI. That's ancestral intelligence.
Ancestral intelligence.
Ancestral intelligence. This notion that our ancestors, we are products of survivors, people that persevered and were resilient enough to endure things that we can't even imagine. So that means we have to be strong. It's in our DNA. Okay, that's part of, it's part of our code. And so why are we wallowing in despair about things that didn't even happen to us? Moreover, why are we allowing ourselves to be pulled down by issues that, be it an ism or whatever, that frankly pales in comparison to what our ancestors endured? So whatever is in front of us, it really doesn't matter. It's about what we're going to do. That's what I say AI, that's what I'm talking about. And then thirdly is collaboration. As I said before, we have a lot of resources in North America. The dollar is very strong pretty much across the Americas. We're sitting here waiting for some big foundation to go and do something for people that share our resemblance. No, we can do something. Let us collectively do something. Yeah. So when I bring folks together once a year for the Festival Diaspora, I call it the secular tent revival, because I want this to be an emotionally moving affair. We're going to move your intellect, but we're going to move your heart as well. And when we go to a place like now in Rio, Brazil is the land of diasporic communities, and the largest Lebanese community, largest Ukrainian community, the largest German community outside of Germany, the large Japanese community. I mean, Rio has a lot of that. I mean, Brazil. So they've been welcoming of different people. And I'm saying, well, there are some things that we can do right now. So let's figure out who these folks are. Let's learn about history and let's do it.
Yeah.
So that's why we're here.
Fantastic. And it is emblematic because we are in a hotel, in a very fancy and expensive hotel where we can see so many Black folks in the corridors and stuff.
Yeah.
And on and off, we are behind a huge slum, a huge community, a favela here.
Yes, yes.
So what do you have to say about this and how emblematic it is or how important it is for our reflection, the Festival of the Diaspora happening exactly in a place like this?
Yeah, I think let me say it differently. Western civilization has created tremendous opportunity, but also savage inequality. Savage. And now I've spent time in favelas. I don't see anyone complaining about their lives there. I see people thriving. That's what I see.
Yeah.
It's very different than I would expect, right?
I agree.
But people are thriving in favelas. In fact, these are sometimes some of the safest places you can be, especially if you're a woman, because they don't want police officers in there because of domestic violence, right? And so you just do not beat women inside of a favela. As perverse as that sounds, I get it, right? Most of my American colleagues from the USA have never seen anything like a favela. They can't even conceptualize that people can live in a place that's so steep. Like, wouldn't that hurt your legs? I'm like, well, you get used to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we have amazing, beautiful legs.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And then most poor people in the USA don't have access to a beach at all. They may never see a beach. Okay. Whereas we're in favelas right here. The beach is right there. You can walk down the street and have access to something that people are paying hundreds of dollars a night to have access to. And so it's a very interesting juxtaposition I think Brazil represents, especially where we are, these tourist areas, because this is not what you expect. We would expect it's only hotels and $1 million houses, not favelas, right there. And there's another one right there. And so we're not that close to poverty in the U.S. Either you're poor or you're not. Okay. Whereas here, everyone's kind of mixed up together. It makes for a very interesting perspective.
Yeah. So this dichotomy, do you think that it is healthy, not only healthy, but also interesting in terms of people from favelas have a lot to teach.
Absolutely.
Because it's not only a way, a means of complaint, but a way of thriving, right?
Absolutely. I think we have just a tremendous opportunity in general for what I call bilateral or bidirectional mentorship. Mm-hmm. The assumption is that, coming from North America, I have knowledge to give you that you don't have. And the evidence of me having more knowledge than you is I have more resources. No. That's not necessarily true. Okay. I think there's a lot to learn from folks that just live differently, that think differently. I mean, just trying to master a few words in Portuguese tells me how unintelligent I am when it comes to languages. So I know that I need help. And I want them to understand that they need help and they can get it from people who look like them, that have very different lives than they've had. Yeah. So I think there's a role for us all to play.
And what outcomes do you intend to achieve with the festival here in Brazil at the end of the event?
Yes. So we've already started with what I call the Night of Inspiration. And that's our annual pitch competition that's supported by Black Ambition and Casa Innovation that's based in Medellin. Mm-hmm. Last year, we awarded $25,000 to maybe 10 entrepreneurs in Brazil, in Colombia. Mm-hmm. And then we raised another $30,000 just in the crowd to support an organization that would support them called Casa Innovation. Mm-hmm. So a year later, that same organization is here in Brazil helping 5 women get $25,000. 5 Brazilian women.
Wow.
But we had 50 applications that came really from all over the country. And so the hope is that those 5 women, they're all here, will garner the support and have a bigger network of potential partners and buyers, suppliers, that their business will improve and scale as a result of being attached to this community of leaders. Moreover, they'll be part of a continental-wide vendor network. So we're featuring their products and their services on our websites so that people can go and purchase directly through the website to, again, get their business. And so I think they're going to hopefully have more access to wealth, more business that can sustain jobs, and hopefully be smarter about how they go about their work as a result of being connected to these folks.
How did you get so many support towards your cause?
Wow. I believed in life that you enter a season of convergence. And convergence for me is, the things that I were trained to do, the things that I'm good at doing, and then the things I'm born to do. And so when those three things come into equilibrium, work disappears. I've tapped into that frequency of production and of creativity, and I'm just doing my thing. And for me, that's what the festival has represented. Every year is bigger than it was the year before. Every year is easier to get sponsorship dollars than before. Every year it's easier to get more people to come and speak than before, because this is a product of convergence. And so this is, I believe, why I was put on this planet, to do something like this. Yes.
And why belonging and diversity are so important.
Yeah. So belonging for me is a fairly new thing. It came about 3 years ago. I was asked to start an external diversity, equity, inclusion program for the think tank that I work for in the USA. And I am not a diversity, equity, inclusion expert. And I respect the field enough to say, okay, let me help you find an expert. He says, no. You're a program expert for our organization, and we're building this for our organization, not for the industry. So I need your help as an expert in our organization on how to do this. I said, okay, fair enough. And so I started doing what I call the landscape analysis. What's out there? And what I discovered is that D&I, at least in the USA, very convoluted. And it has no beginning and no end. You can't eat, which part of the elephant am I looking at right now, right? And so I'm like, that's not a good space for us, because what we're going to do, frankly, as a white-led organization, is remove air out of a balloon for a more deserving organization that probably isn't white-led. It's been doing this for 30 years. And I don't want that on my spiritual docket. I don't want that on my spiritual docket. Okay. And so I said, okay, what is the right place for us? How can we really get into the game? So I started doing what West Africans have done for years. I talked to my elders. I went out to people I really respected. I bought coffee. I bought dinners. I said, I need to talk to you. And the consensus from those conversations is that I should be focused on where the conversation should go, not where it is today. And so that's where this idea, I'm sitting there trying to workshop this idea, okay, where is D&I going? Where is it going? What's the purpose of these things? What is it tethered to? And I said, okay, we've never defined it. We've never defined a destination.
Yeah.
D&I in the USA was started under President Nixon, okay, as we know, because he asked one question. How many Black people do you have working for your company? That's all he asked. How many women do you have next year? And pretty soon he has a whole list of questions. Now, why is this important? Every Fortune 1000 company in the USA, their biggest customer is the U.S. federal government. So if your biggest customer asks you a question, and this is a competitive process, it becomes a requirement. It becomes a requirement.
Yeah.
Right? Because you want to score well. But he did it for his own curiosity. It wasn't part of some big plan. And so I am putting the big plan on top of D&I. The big plan, our big goal, our destination is to create a land where everyone belongs and everyone has equitable opportunities to thrive. Okay? And so D&I is a strategy to get you to thriving. It is not the strategy. There's multiple strategies. But now that it's tethered to something bigger than ourselves, belonging. Who doesn't want to belong? Everybody wants to belong.
No.
I also want to create an intellectual monolith where it's impossible to say something opposite. Because if you go out in public and say, I want to belong, but I don't want anyone else to belong, we know that you're insane. Insane people think like that. And now I can ignore you. But it's a lot easier for me, let's say as a middle-aged white man in leadership, to say, I can't support D&I because they're seeking to replace me. That's a human reaction. I actually empathize with you on that. I get that to a degree. But if we change it to say, no, this is about belonging, it may be you, maybe someone else, This is not about replicating yourself. This is about creating an environment where everyone can thrive. That's very different.
Yeah, and if we put the equity in this equation, things just get a much bigger dimension.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I do believe that equity should be untethered from everything else because it's just the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And it's also a reasonable thing. And so I work with a lot of companies that are focused on retention of employees because it's easy to hire someone. It's hard to keep.
Yeah.
Okay. And you actually make more money per employee the longer they stay at the company because they just better. The innovation cycles are shorter.
Exactly.
And so if people are coming and going every 18 months because you have an environment where they don't feel safe, you're losing money. It costs $66,000 to replace a mid-level person, just a middle manager, $66,000 US. Can you imagine doing that more than once a year? No. No.
Yeah.
So I take the morality out of it. I say, here's the big idea, belonging and thriving. And your why is because you want to retain employees. If they feel like they don't belong, they're going to leave. You got to replace. So I'm going to save you money, but you're going to do the right thing in the process.
Yeah. And how the Festival of the Diaspora is approaching all those topics. And with whom are you talking to?
Yeah. So we have some pretty big corporate supporters. We have the policy academies. We have Google. We have Meta. We have MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth. We have Black Ambition. These are companies dedicated and focused on belonging and inclusion. And so you see, we have 24 different panels over 4 days. And several of these topics are featuring diversity, equity, and inclusion leaders that are deep in their field. They know this stuff very well, but also technology, also these other things. But we're covering like the intellectual edge of these issues. We're really pushing the envelope with folks every single day. We want them to be creative in this space because you're helping your colleagues be better at their jobs. And so we cover these issues pretty extensively. And why it's important to cover those issues in a place like Brazil, you have a very different notion of Blackness than I do because I'm from the USA. You're from Brazil. It's very different. You have different cultural norms than I do. Okay. For instance, we don't have anything besides Christmas that we take more than 2 days off for. You'll have Carnival, which is not Christmas.
No.
And so, but the entire
and it's not only 2 days off.
Oh, and it's a lot more than 2 days.
4 or 5.
It's 4 or 5 days. And then people have to recover from it, you know? And in the US, that would blow our minds. Okay. I was like, what do you mean? Were you personally involved in this? Why do you care? Like, but that's a nuance. That's the textured version of you.
And there is no wrong and right.
Exactly.
There are differences that we can learn from each
Exactly.
other. Right?
And so that's what we're trying to expose by going to different countries, that there are a variety of ways to see this thing we call life, and they're all okay.
Yeah.
They're all okay.
I agree. Yeah. Despite the challenge of, trying to apply and trying to evangelize about diversity, inclusion, belonging in the world, despite of all the challenges that surround this issue, what do you really expect, dream, and believe and fight?
Yeah, I really believe that as humans, we can be superhuman, meaning we can rise above our base impulses. And to me, that is what distinguishes us from mammals. I was in Kenya 2 months ago, and I got to see a lion kill, and it was pretty brutal. But it's perfectly natural. It's also perfectly natural for humans to behave that way. But we don't. For the most part, we don't. And I'm saying that next level of superhumanity is saying, I know that I want this, and I know that I've already had access to this. I should share with others.
I want this too.
Yeah. And by me sharing, everyone gets to have some.
Yeah.
And we're all better. But if I stay in my competitive phase the whole time, we won't make progress. And that hurts me too. Even though I think I'm keeping all my goods to myself, at some point, I'm going to die. Then what? Okay. And so I want us to be superhuman. And that's my belief that we can get there. And so the festival to me is an opportunity to be superhuman for 4 days.
What a visionaire.
Yeah.
So to wrap up our conversation, what message would you like to leave to the Brazilian people,
Yes.
After this amazing festival of the diaspora? So feel free.
Yes.
The camera is yours.
Well, to my brothers and sisters in Brazil, firstly, thank you for welcoming us. This has been just a tremendous event and opportunity to learn more about this amazing country, the largest country in the Americas by land-wise, and such a diverse place in terms of all the different communities. That spirit of welcomeness, you feel that instantly. And so we certainly hope that you'll be a part of this movement as we continue to make our way around Latin America and the world. We want to go to the African continent soon. But I really appreciate all the amazing things in Brazil. It's just such a unique place. I don't think it has many rivals in the world. Just such a very unique place. So you should be very proud of your cultural assets.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for being with us.
Yes,
so long life to your project and huge success. We need it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Esse foi o Brazilian Connection com o Cordell Carter. E espero que vocês continuem com a gente, porque vamos ter muito mais por aí. Até lá.